Um, Hello, everybody. I'm Kushi Sampath, founder of Healthopedia, and I am pleased to welcome all of you to our third official interview with Dr. Rashima Verma regarding mental health care and awareness. First of all, Ms. Rashima, thank you so much for coming, and I'm sure
You're
this
welcome.
is productive. So, why don't you
Absolutely.
start off by telling a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. And I'd like to introduce myself. So, my name is Ashima Verma. I have worked as a school counselor at the senior wing at the Air Force School, Delhi for 8 years. And currently, I'm working as the personal and social educator at Mala Aditi International School in Bangalore. And so, the role primarily involves counseling. And since I am a psychology professional, so I will be sharing a little bit of my views about mental health today.
Yeah. Okay, so now that we're talking about mental health care, before we proceed, let's just establish what we mean when we say health. So,
Okay, so for starters, I think whenever anybody hears the term health, and whenever even I, as a student or as a person, would hear the term health, my first immediate response would be physical health. And the only thing that'll come to my mind is something to do with exercise, something to do with my eating pattern, some illness, or some disformity, because that is how somebody expects health to be spoken of. So even when our parents are telling us that, okay, do you feel healthy? Do you feel fine? The first response that they're seeking from us is something which is very visible. They're only focusing on maybe the physical aspect of maybe our body. They're not focusing too much on how we are feeling. Whenever we talk about health, and we have to remember that health is a holistic term. It's not something that has to do only with the way you look, the way you appear, the way you're eating things, or how you're behaving, but it also has to do with how you're feeling internally. So, health is something a lot more holistic and a lot more comprehensive. And a lot of times, most of us end up only looking at the visible aspect of our body and our health. And we try to take care of that rather than talking about maybe the root cause of what is actually making us feel good or bad. So, that also should be under the ambit of the definition of health entirely.
so usually what happens is when you tell somebody I'm going to a psychologist or I have a mental illness, you get a pretty extreme
Right.
reaction. So, do you have any thoughts about that?
Okay, so I think this is by far something that has been discussed so many times by I think everyone, and yet I think it still remains an area which needs a lot of awareness even till date, and I think it will still need it for maybe the next coming decade also. So whenever we hear the term mental health or counseling or psychology or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, the first immediate response we get is what is wrong with this person? That there is something clearly wrong with this person, or there is something deviant or something which is amiss. And usually a normal, a genuine response is that we start feeling a little scared about the person also. We don't know how this person might act. We think like, okay, this person may do something harmful, or maybe this person is vulnerable or is too emotional or too sensitive. And we become extremely careful about these terms around that person. But mental health professionals and counselors simply have an idea, and we understand that it comes from a long set of conditioning also in the past, because we know that it's been ages since this term mental health has been associated with psychology or with counseling. And even the term mental in itself, it means that it's something to do with deviancy, it has to do with something psychotic, something negative. So the connotation itself represents something entirely negative, which it's not. So whenever we talk about mental health, it's always best to maybe link it as mental health professionals, so that it should be something which is accessible and something as approachable as going to a doctor. It should not feel like going to somebody who needs extra help and this person cannot manage their life well. So the perception attached to it is a result of a lot of conditioning over the years, which has come through a lot of factors, whether it's our family systems or the way our media shows it, or even the fact that we see it every day and we consume it every day as part of our television shows. So all this plays a role in creating a wrong and a skewed perception of mental health today.
So, just before this, you were talking about how this awareness, how we will need awareness even for the next decade. Do you quickly mind explaining the importance of mental health care? Because most of the time, this is overlooked.
Right. So I think the first thing that we must understand is that, and even if I look back, I think most of the schools today will ideally have either a counselor or they will have a position of somebody who's there as a caretaker or a caregiver. So that's important to understand that even when schools realize that every student today, even if you're in elementary, even if you're in the middle school, every child today is going through a lot of changes, whether it's through the pandemic, whether it's through a general progression of school life. Every person is evolving, and that's when your emotions and your identities are being developed. If at that time you're not realizing that maybe there are a lot of emotions going through our minds and our brains, and if we don't have the right person to guide us, or maybe even a channel to simply vent it out, then maybe mental health is something that becomes overlooked. A lot of times people think that just being physically fit is important. If you're somebody who's physically very, very active, you're very good in exercising and health. But if you feel too overwhelmed or too stressed and you do not have somebody to share it with, or you feel like there is a negative situation that comes up and you do not know how to counter that situation, you don't have the resources for it. And maybe you can build and you need to share it with someone who's confidential and someone who maybe doesn't belong to your family or your friend system. Then a mental health professional or a counselor can be a very good way. And one thing I think that all of us need to remember is that maybe some of us can be very privileged to have family around us and maybe friends around us who want to share these things. But a lot of times, there are many, many people in the world who do not have a stable family system or a person who they can share these things with. So, in that case, they will always require a third person who they go up to for the right guidance, and they can at least understand the diverse effects of so many emotions that are being faced with us. And especially if I speak about the pandemic, that's when maybe the need of mental health also started to come up to the fore. Because now that people who are staying in, and a lot of us will have their personality choices. A lot of us might be extroverts who like going out, who like meeting people, who like engaging with people socially. So they, of course, will feel a lot many emotional constraints of staying inside the house. Even for introverts, I would say they have a lot of boundary issues. They will want a lot of privacy, they will want their own space, they will want to communicate these things. And all of these things started to crop up during the pandemic. So this is maybe the biggest year where we've seen a lot of spurge in or mental health requirements, or a lot of discussion around being sensitive or having a lot of emotional awareness. So maybe this is the right time where we can start to look towards mental health as being important, because it's something which becomes overlooked simply because it's not visible in our physical bodies, something that is not noticeable. So we tend to ignore it.
Yeah, so talking about the pandemic and introverts, extroverts, as a whole, how do you think it has affected us mentally? I mean, I'm sure it would have affected everybody. We just haven't acknowledged it yet. So,
Right. So I think the pandemic, I would say it's worked differently for different people. So I would not say it's been all bad for everyone, because as much as I've come across people in the beginning, yes, it's something which is very adverse, something which is very radical, not something that we would imagine to be this indefinite, because we still don't know how long it's going to last. Our plans are going to change accordingly, and not everyone is comfortable with change. And that's important to understand, because there are some people who can change with the situation that is coming along because they have a very good support system. Like I said, they might be privileged enough to have it. Some of us may have a very hard time staying away from the milestone things that are happening in our life. Some of us may have planned a farewell party. Some of us may have planned a lot of plans in the next year. We may want to take that trip this year. We may want to be a part of so many clubs. We may want to apply to so many things, which have actually stopped us from taking those roles. So a lot of our daily patterns and our daily routines have been disrupted. So something as simple as our sleep patterns, our eating patterns, all of these have become erratic. And it's not just something that works for students or maybe children, but it's something that goes across even for adults and for even senior citizens. That even for them, adapting to something which is so diverse and something so difficult has been a long journey. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of progression for all of these things to come together. We need a lot of help and a support from each other during this time to understand each other's boundary. And let's not forget, I think, a very important point, which I think all of us have never been with, is we've never stayed 24/7 inside our houses. That's the first thing. All of us have had that time of going out, whether it's on the weekend, whether it's alternatively, whether it's meeting our friends daily. So we have always had that time to face interact with our friends, our family, our peers. That has always given us a little bit of satisfaction. But the fact that man is a social being, and even the most introvert of person, and I speak that for myself because I myself am an introvert, but I would still prefer going out and meeting people after 10 days of not meeting anybody, because that for me is a very long stretch of time. So when we talk about personalities, everyone I think is always missing that touch of maybe genuine face to face connection, because it used to give us a lot of help and it used to give us a lot of mental energy that we meet our friends, we interact with them directly. Virtually we can connect with a lot of ways, but during the pandemic, of course, especially when there was a lockdown, we've never stayed 24/7 with our families, we've never stayed with our parents. We have had to define our boundaries very clearly, that maybe we don't need to sit together 24/7. We need our own time to do our own thing. Parents need their own time to maybe do all the chores, and we understand each other a little bit better also. But it could also lead to a lot of fiction, because there might be a lot of families who may have issues when it comes to conflicts or maybe discussions around few topics which may come up every day. So not every person is capable of handling those things very well, and they need a person to talk to. So I think it works absolutely differently for different people. Some people have taken it very positively. And in fact, some of them have said that, okay, it works for them because maybe it's given them more time to heal, or it's given them a little more pause in life, because they may be people who were overworking themselves when the pandemic was not there. So they have actually taken a break, they have taken a back seat, and they've calmed down and they've created a new routine for themselves where they're focusing more on exercising, focusing more on health, focusing more on eating right, and creating a routine on yourself. But I think, in a word, all of us have had to self regulate ourselves too many times when it comes to the pandemic, because we have to change our emotions. We have to make sure that we communicate it well. We are staying with the same people. So we have to ensure that we don't get into conflicts every day. And we have to find something that creates a boundary which is private also, and also at the same time it's acceptable to everyone in our family.
Yeah, that makes sense. So not everybody is able to change as fast as maybe somebody else. So what would you recommend? Like, what should they do? What are the steps they should take? How should they proceed?
I think the first step to recognize and to acknowledge anything is just to first accept the fact that maybe you're not able to deal with something well, or you need help. That's the first thing. Because the moment I also say to myself that, okay, I think maybe I'm not able to solve this situation, it gives me a little bit, it gives me a sense of disappointment that, okay, why am I not able to communicate this to my family? Why am I not able to solve this problem? So reaching out is super important whenever you feel that you're in a state of doubt, whether it's reaching out to your friends or whether it's reaching for professional guidance. I would personally recommend that maybe your friends can give you a good support system in the beginning, but maybe after that, if you feel like you're not able to deal with something and you want to share or understand your emotions better, speak to a professional person and reach out to them. It's not something that makes you vulnerable or weak. That's something which is a perception that has been going on. But I think all of us at some point or the other need help in one way or the other. We go to a doctor simply because we're not feeling well or we don't look well, even though we know that, okay, we can just pop a pill and we can just take crocin and we'll be fine. But we still go to a doctor for second opinion because we trust them to be a professional. Similarly, whenever we feel like we're in a situation and we're in a pandemic or we're in a lockdown or in a negative state of emotion where we don't understand what's happening with us, go to a professional and reach out. That's the first step. Accept that maybe we need help, and take that help and take that leap forward towards helping. And don't worry about judgment coming from people around you, because that is something that unfortunately is going to be there. So that's a perception that might stay, but we need to be strong enough to help ourselves first. The second thing that I would personally recommend to anyone is taking a time out. That's also super important. So, not rushing into decisions and not trying to compare ourselves with everyone. So, in the beginning of the year, a lot of challenges came up. A lot of people were working very hard in creating those challenges, whether it was a TikTok challenge or it was a coffee challenge, which was fun in the beginning. But I would say personally, getting into a mode of maybe being very competitive with your friends, if your friends are doing 10 things at a time, you don't need to be the person doing that. If you are comfortable doing one thing at a time, that's absolutely fine. There is nothing wrong with it. every person has a different pace of working. There might be one student who might be working on 10 things at a time and they get all the 10 things done. That's just how their pace works. You might be a person who prefers to work with maybe two things at a time, and that's absolutely okay. Staying at home or staying differently in the house 24/7 can have different effects on different people. So, no need to panic and compare yourself with anyone. It's not a race, it's not something that you're rushing at. Another thing, but yes, having said that, the third most important thing will be creating your own routine. Because, like I said, that even if you like to pace yourself well, create a routine that works for you. If you think that that's a routine that's going to be productive, take a time for maybe sleeping, take a very good time for leisure, take enough time for resting and for eating so that you don't miss out on your daily routine also. As part of your maybe school or college or work, we were all going out and we were all traveling, but we still had a fixed routine every day, which was given to us. In that manner, create a routine that works for you. And on the side note, I would say maybe indulge in hobbies that actually excite you. Virtual meetings, webinars, online courses, something to do with music, something to do with dancing, anything that interests you, you need to take out time for that because that's going to be your personality development through the year, because that's something which we might miss out on if we are not meeting so many people around us. We are not experiencing the experiences of other people. So start sharing and maybe start listening to what their side of the story also is. So look up online, go online for a virtual course, go online for a virtual webinar, and you will find many links that are available, whether it's a part of a TED talk, whether it's a part of a YouTube channel or an Instagram forum. You will find many, many talks that might appeal to your value system. So it could be something as simple as video games or sports or something to do with music or dancing, anything. But whatever suits you as a hobby, which you did work on, try to pursue that at least indoors or try to at least follow up on what is happening in that arena. Keep yourself updated. Do not detach yourself in thinking that maybe this is the year where I take an entire pause and time is going to stop. Because let's remember that time is not going to wait, it is still going to go on. So even when we come out of the pandemic and even when we step into the real world, we still will be stepping into 2021 or 2022. So that's not going to change. So everything around you is going to adapt to it. There are going to be changes and there are going to be concessions, but they are not going to be something that's going to give away that this year doesn't exist or it's a zero year. That will not happen. So maybe we need to understand that and we need to make ourselves more connected with people around us. Virtually, webinars, seminars, maybe attending conferences, maybe going for online activities and clubs. That's going to keep your energy going and keep yourself productive during this time. Right? So maybe these are few things that we can practice. And of course, the last and maybe the most important will be just look around the news and be grateful. That's super important because when we see the news channels, the moment we see that okay, children don't have maybe let's say mobile phones, they don't have an internet connection, we get very angry at very little things. So even when there is a technical glitch, we immediately start getting very flared up that okay, 5 minutes away gone and we can't attend a class, 2 minutes away gone, we can't complete our work, and we start throwing a tantrum because that's just how we are. We're so conditioned to having these things around us. But what we forget is that this is an year of change, and a lot of children are struggling with one device. A lot of people may have only one device which has a very low network which doesn't work. They may not have access to a lot of basic things in life. A lot of people have been losing their jobs in the pandemic. So maybe trying to remember whatever we are grateful for and just thinking that okay, maybe it's not all bad, maybe I can work on this, I need to calm myself down, this is just a technical thing, I can get over it. Because I think one thing that the pandemic has worked on is that it's made us more empathetic. So even as maybe teachers on the other side or even as students, I think both ways we've been a lot more empathetic towards what other people are facing. So that's one thing we can all work on collectively as a whole.
Yeah, so the first point you brought up was to admit to yourself that you need help. So I would like to know, when do you admit to yourself? Are there any symptoms or is there a certain manner in which you behave when you should know that, okay, I'm behaving like this means I need help?
Right. Okay, so I think it's a good question because I think this is a very diagnostic question because a lot of times I've noticed that a lot of people end up self-diagnosing themselves. So they automatically will say that they will come up to me and they will say that, Miss, we think we are depressive. And it comes from a very clear fact that they've already researched what depression means, and they've already searched it on Google, and they've had 10 sites which they visited, and they simply match their symptom to that behavior, and they think that this is how we can clinically present ourselves. So in my view, I think whenever you feel like people around you, I think the few signs that you can start thinking that maybe I need to seek out help will be, first of course, will be if you have an erratic sleep and an eating pattern. And by that, I do not mean something which is going to be temporary or something which is going to be over the weekend. If you have an erratic sleep pattern for a consistent amount of time, which is at least maybe 2 to 3 weeks, then you might feel that, okay, maybe this is something that's not working very well for my body. If you're losing energy, which you never used to do before, if you have a lot of fatigue, if you feel very tired constantly in doing things that you enjoy, especially the things that you enjoy. For example, you used to like dancing before, you now have a webinar for dancing and you don't feel like attending it after maybe 1 or 2 classes. That could simply be because you're not interested in the online medium. But chances are very high that if you're actually interested in dancing and if you genuinely like it, you will be keen to learn about your interests more. So, whenever you start losing an interest in certain things around you, that's maybe a sign that's telling you that, okay, maybe I need to relook and I need to think about what's going on. So, a loss of interest is a very important sign that a lot of people tend to ignore, that we're just simply lazy or today we don't feel like doing it. But you're feeling, if it's staying like this for a longer time, maybe it's time to think and relook on it also. Another very important thing will be, do not overuse certain terms also. That's very important for everyone, because a lot of times children end up and people end up diagnosing and calling themselves as having a lot of panic attacks. We feel worried, so we start feeling like, okay, it's something which gives us a panic attack, and it's anxiety and it's disorders. Anxiety is absolutely normal, being worried about things is absolutely normal, till the time it's not disrupting your daily activities. So if you feel like you're not able to concentrate on a simple homework that you were doing maybe very easily before, if you were writing 1 page and you're not able to complete that 1 page or that 5 page assignment simply because you're thinking of something constantly, then that means that it's actually disrupting your daily life. So if it's disrupting your daily routines, then it's a thought that needs to be looked into. And it can be anything to do from maybe a career choice, it could be your choice of college, it could be your choice of maybe friends, it could be your parents, it could be your families, it could be anything. Or it simply could be your self worth. You might feel like you're not productive throughout the year and you don't feel like starting anything. So, anything that is disrupting your daily life, anything that's disrupting your sleep and your eating habit, and a loss of interest. Whenever there's a loss of interest for more than 2 to 3 weeks in something that you enjoy, it gives a very clear sign that maybe the child needs to speak to somebody about it, or they at least need to get to the reason of it. Because for me personally, if I enjoy, let's say, a YouTube channel, and my favorite would be, I would say, maybe I enjoy, let's say, a Scoop Hoop channel, or I watch OK Tested, or I watch a particular blogger, and I suddenly stop watching that blogger, or I realize that, okay, I would need to maybe not watch YouTube for a while. I can do that for a break. I can do that for maybe 1 day, 2 day, 3 days, maybe a week. But after a week, I will want to look back at something that I enjoy. I will want to take that break. But whenever we feel that, okay, maybe we're not wanting to go back to YouTube at all, we don't want to connect with anything or anyone, that's when we start isolating ourselves. So, isolation is maybe the first sign where we're starting to think that we're detaching ourselves from things around us, and we need to start introspecting a little bit more at that time. But yes, avoiding Wikipedia and Google would not be the right way. That's only something that maybe people can use for reference, but I would not suggest people typing in their symptoms and simply going and understanding it as a disorder, because Google can immediately link an anxiety disorder with something as difficult as maybe having a tumor or having a cancer. It can go to that extent, right? So don't overgeneralize it and don't overuse it, because it's a little exaggerated also online. So instead of diagnosis, maybe reach out to a professional, and they might simply say that it's just something to do with anxiety, and it can be worked up over maybe 1 or 2 sessions maximum. You don't need something prolonged. And again, mental health, one more thing I'd add is that it's not something incurable. A lot of times people feel that, okay, once a person has gone to a counselor, forever they will have that tag that, okay, this child had gone to the counselor in maybe this particular year, or they had met with the counselor or with the psychologist and they need help even today. Not true. There are so many times when I've met people only once, or I've met people only maybe 2 or 3 times. And after that, they've simply gone on to lead their lives and they've done very well. They've been very independent. So it's not something incurable or something which is impossible to cure. So that's just a perception that a lot of people have. But yes, diagnose yourself maybe at the right time. Notice your body, notice your energy levels, notice your interest levels. If you feel like they're dropping, that's maybe when you need to start thinking and maybe looking into reaching out for help, I would say.
Yes. So another question that was asked was, now that we've been home, we've been interacting on social media a lot more, we've been looking at the news. Has this in any way impacted our mental state?
I think television definitely has a long role to play in this, because I think most of us got most of our information through television only. So whether it's watching a news channel, and even when I talk about news channels, that's not a personal belief, but something that I think all of us understand, that even news channels work for and against government policies also at times. So they will give a news which might be inflated at times when it comes to the number of cases, or sometimes they might just give us a news which is extremely optimistic, both of which I think are not really true. So we should be very, very careful in the kind of content that we're actually consuming. Because if we are watching a news television and it says that, okay, tomorrow COVID no longer exists, we need to be careful that we need to watch a series of news channels to actually confirm the same news. So it can't be one particular channel. Having said that, that's only about news. If I speak about maybe the television shows and the kind of media that we watch today, so OTT platforms have largely, I think, come up majorly, I think, throughout the year, because there have not been any live televisions or anything that has come up. So most of our channels and most of our shows have been around whatever we get served on Netflix, on Amazon, on Hulu, and so on. So we end up just consuming that content directly. And a lot of teenage shows and a lot of adult shows also come up which show mental health in a very different light. They might end up showing things like mental health and substance abuse to be very, very closely linked. May or may not be true, because mental health will not necessarily mean that the person will end up in addiction. But I've personally seen a lot of shows like Euphoria, Queen's Gambit, and so on, which will immediately link substance abuse, and they will have something to do with depression or with anxiety. And they will just link those things together because they feel like children or people, or especially young adults, will relate to it more. So even when we talk about teenage shows, or even when we talk about television shows or movies, they represent mental health in a particular direction, which is very scandalous. They will want to create it to be more theatrical. They want to create it to be more dramatic, which is not how mental health actually is. There are good shows that will maybe represent something which is real. So maybe a show or maybe a movie like, let's say, Chichore spoke a little bit about suicide awareness. It spoke a little bit about mental health. Then there was a movie like Dear Zindagi, which came up last time, which I think is a good movie to talk about therapy, because it speaks about therapy in a very common sense that everyone needs to go up in case they need help, everyone needs to reach out. So that kind of content is fine. But I think we should not influence ourselves in thinking that whatever we see online is not how it's represented in real life. So it's almost like having that issue of real versus real. So always think on those lines that maybe this is just something which is a dramatization. It's not something that actually happens in real life in every person's life. The way they deal with things when it comes to mental health, the way they show a disorder, the way they speak about terms like obsessive compulsiveness, being an OCD, having anxiety, having anorexia, having self esteem issues, it's good that they're touching upon these things. But I think the solution and the therapies for it are usually not shown in a very positive manner. They're usually shown in a very dramatic manner, simply because they need the audience to start engaging with it. They only are doing it from that point of view. They're not actually trying to portray something very real. So I think take your pick very wisely when it comes to maybe watching the shows. It's all up there for everyone to consume and to watch. There's nothing that we can do about it. We can't stop children from watching it. But yes, if you believe that that's something that is true, maybe that is where you need to draw a line. That maybe just watch it with a pinch of salt. That, okay, it's something that's there, something which is on screen. It's not something that happens like that in real life at all. Counseling and therapies work very differently in real life. It's something very personal, something in depth, and something very confidential. It's not something that goes out in public so often as clearly shown in the movies or the television shows, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. So the last question, we spoke about how if somebody need, I mean, when somebody knows that they need help, and you spoke about maybe how they can go to friends. So maybe do you want to say something about how the friends should react to be supportive, or how should they handle if their friend is in need?
Okay, so I think a good point there, because I think a lot of times we also forget about the fact that even the support system needs to be mature enough. They also need to know how to actually empathetically listen to what the problem is and maybe not give their own advice. They can maybe simply suggest something very, very simple as relaxing, something as simple as talking to them, sharing things with them, sharing their feelings, sharing their own experiences. So if I'm a listener, if somebody comes up to me as a friend and says that they're feeling anxious or they're feeling very depressed, my first reaction would be to simply lend a listening ear, to give them an empathetic thought, and maybe to tell them that, okay, have you tried few of the things? And these can be very simple things. So have you tried to maybe work on your sleep pattern? Have you tried to maybe go out? Have you tried to do something differently? If the person has already tried all these things and yet they are coming to you as a friend and they're sharing that this is something that doesn't work for us, then I would personally suggest that maybe the friend, the best thing that the person can do is maybe suggest that, okay, would you like me to accompany you? Or maybe both of us can maybe seek out professional help and I can help you with it. And I can also accompany you virtually if you want. So if you want to be there virtually for your friend, and now, of course, since the lockdown doesn't exist, you can always have the liberty of going and meeting with that person face to face and getting to know more. But my person's recommendation would be keep whatever the feelings the person is sharing confidential, because that's ethically very, very important. So if your friend is sharing something with you, never directly go up to a counselor or a therapist and simply start sharing what they're feeling. That's never to be done. Always take consent of the person that, okay, do you want me to share it? Otherwise, if you feel that, okay, this person is not going to seek out help, just ask the person directly as a friend that, do you want me to speak to a counselor on your behalf? Simple as that. If they feel comfortable with it, if they feel that, okay, I don't want to reveal my name, I don't want to get into the middle of it, share my thoughts and then I will step in. Do that as a friend. So just be there for the person, be confidential, be empathetic, do not belittle and don't put tags and judgments to it. Do not start thinking that, okay, maybe it's depression. Even if you know that, okay, it's depression, even if you know that it's something to do with anxiety, even if you know the name of the disorder, do not start using those terms in front of that person, because then that person will start automatically using that term even in daily life, that, okay, I'm anorexic, okay, I have this disorder, I have anxiety, I have so and so. So I think over tagging is something which we need to stop. But as friends, we need to reach out to them empathetically, listen to our friends carefully, do not pass a judgment, and do not break the confidentiality. That's important. And maybe in the end, if we are not able to handle it, if we think that, okay, maybe it's getting a little too taxing, because I do understand that as friends we only have a certain bandwidth. After a certain point we also need our own break. We also need that, okay, we've listened to it, we've given recommendations, beyond this point we don't have anything more. In that situation, always tell the person that maybe I can recommend somebody for you, or if you want that I can maybe look up a counselor or a therapist for you. Would you like that, and would you want me to speak on your behalf if you're not comfortable? Take consent, and chances are that if you approach it this way, your friend will not feel too threatened about sharing these things. And of course, respect their boundaries for maybe not wanting to share it, because a lot of times children don't want to share it with their parents, they don't want to share it with their families or with teachers, and that's fine. They simply want to share it with you because they want to vent. And even venting is a very good beginning to something which is to do with acceptance. So it's something which is a good step, which I think all of us should always welcome as friends and as support systems.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you very much. So, do you have
Yeah,
any
for sure.
closing comments, anything you would like to add that we missed out?
I think nothing. I think I simply want to say that I think whatever you watch, whatever content you consume, whoever are the people you are speaking to, it's important to realize that your support system are going to make you or break you. That's one thing which is super important to know. And if you do not have a support system, find that strength within yourself to maybe support yourself and keep yourself productive in whatever manner you can. So you do not need 100 friends. You can even have one friend, or you may not even have friends. That's absolutely fine. But as long as you're productive, as long as you're optimistic about something in the future, and you're executing your work well, if you're executing your tasks, then I think you're on the right track. As long as you're not complacent about it and you've not given up, do not think of this year or this entire situation to be a 0 year. That's something I would not recommend. But yes, think of it as an year where you can pause a little bit, and maybe if you had 10 things to do, just maybe narrow them down to maybe 2 or 3 things, but do them to the very end. Complete those tasks and be proud of yourself. That's super important when it comes to mental health.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was very helpful, and I'm sure everybody is going to appreciate it.
Thank you, Kushi.
Thank you. So everybody, that was Ms. Ashima. If you have any follow-up questions, please, you can let me know in the comments, or you have our contact information, you can email us and we will get back to you. Thank you for watching, and if you like us, please do like this video and subscribe. See you on Thursday.